What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? Navy, Zachary, what's up, guys?
Navy!
But it's time, y'all. How's it going, everybody? It's time for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. Let's go! All right, it's time to begin the conversation. So, Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, or Tenkaichi 4 if you want to press that thing going on. Zachary, we're actually about to talk about the name Sparking Zero and why it's called Sparking Zero. And Fox just literally said the thing I just said, Tenkaichi 4. So, let's talk about why it's called Sparking Zero in the first place, because a lot of people weirdly are confused by this. I know there's going to be some people that know why it's called that, and if you already know, don't be annoying about it. I'm about to explain it. That's part of the show, right? So, first of all, if you're new here, hello everybody, Tyrone TG3 here. So, Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. We finally got footage of it on the Video Game Awards of all things. That was weird. And we also got a couple of screenshots earlier today. So the timing of this discussion video was actually pretty cool. But let's explain why it's called Sparking Zero to even begin with. So a lot of you all are confused by the name. What the hell is this Sparking Zero? Why is Dragon Ball being called this when it so clearly should be called Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 4, or at least Dragon Ball Raging Blast 3, right? So, way back during Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 1, the game was called Dragon Ball Z Neo Spark. It was called Sparking. And then there was the other ones, Dragon Ball Z Neo Sparking 2, Neo Sparking 3. They just kept calling it Neo Sparking, right? That was the name in Japanese, was the Sparking. They kept with the Sparking name. That was the name its whole way through. If you type it in Japanese, that's what they'll tell you, which I find extra funny because the American name was more Japanese than the Japanese name. The American name for the game was Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi, which translates to Dragon Ball Z Strongest Under the Heavens Tournament. That's what the Budokai Tenkaichi means. Or the Tenkaichi Budokai. The Tenkaichi Budokai was first revealed during the Dragon Ball series. The original one. The one where Goku's a kid. It translates to Strongest Under the Heavens, right? Not just video footage, but we also got more images from Jump Vesta. Yeah, that's why I said we got screen images. So, the original name was based off of the Strongest Under the Heavens tournament. Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi, which was used even further. The original name was based off of the first 3 games that came out, which was Dragon Ball Z Budokai, Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2, and Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3. But what happened was Budokai translates to Dragon Ball Z, the strongest. That's what it literally translates to. So, Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi translates to Strongest Under the Heavens, right? But, what ended up happening was Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi was called Sparking Meteor, right? Which actually translated to Dragon Ball Z Sparking, which translates to Dragon Ball Z Sparking Meteor, right? So that's what happened. And then Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2 was called Dragon Ball Z Sparking Neo, which translates to Dragon Ball Z Sparking Neo, right? Sparking a Neo. The original Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi's name was Dragon Ball Z Sparking. So it was Sparking, Neo Sparking, and then finally we had the last Sparking, which I stated already was Sparking Meteor. So we have Sparking, Sparking Neo, Sparking Meteor, and Sparking Zero. So there you go. That's why it's called that. It's called Sparking Zero because it's the next step up. It's moving forward. There's a lot of times in Japan, or just even in America, where instead of labeling them one after another, like car models, they'll just rename it or give it a different name, like Zero. This has been similar in Xbox, Xbox 360, and then Xbox One, and then Xbox One S, right? Or Xbox Series X. Where here, they decided to go the zero route because zero can often mean A, a reboot of something, or B, taking it to the next step, but enhancing it further. Much like even in American advertising, we call things Coke and then Coke Zero. But in that one, it's both terms. Coke Zero being a new revolutionized Coke, but also meaning this Coke has 0 calories. So that means it won't make you fat, even though it totally will, has tons of sugar. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero pretty much means Dragon Ball with 0 calories. No, I'm kidding. But it means it's the next step in the Sparking series. So yes, it's still a part of the Budokai Tenkaichi series because it's still taking the name Sparking Zero. Now, one thing I would hope that we recommend we do is just change the name in America to Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 4. But honestly, I don't mind the Sparking Zero title. It'll just make it look completely new to those who played nothing but the Americanized games. Those who know the Japanese history behind Dragon Ball Sparking would know immediately what this is about. But those who don't will just be looking at a game that's called Sparking Zero. But to be fair, it's been years since Budokai Tenkaichi 3 came out, so it relatively makes some sense why they would just go with the surname Sparking Zero. Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3 came out in 2006 in America, if I'm not mistaken. By that time, years have passed. The game has long since been released at this point. So, at this point, I think it's safe to say that by the time we got it in America, it actually came out in 2007. My bad, not 2006. It came out in Japan in 2007 as well. So by the time it got released, I think it's very safe to say that Dragon Ball was due for a name change. We had already gotten Ultimate Tenkaichi since then at that point. What's up, Antrite? So, when you think about it, Dragon Ball Z had already reached its Tenkaichi predecessors. That within Raging Blast 1 and Raging Blast 2. Then after that, we ended up getting Ultimate Tenkaichi, which carried on the Tenkaichi name anyway. So at that point, we just decided to move on to Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, because it's naturally the next evolution in the Sparking series, while still using the rebooted name, and then making that name international, so everybody in the audience can just understand this is a Dragon Ball game. And to push things further, they got rid of the Z. And I'm going to be honest with y'all, without the Z, the Dragon Ball logo looks very naked. Yeah, even with the Dragon Ball Super logo next to it, you at least saw some sense of, okay, the Dragon Ball logo feels complete because it's got something at the end of it. And I know original Dragon Ball had nothing behind it. It was just called Dragon Ball. But at least even that title was changed to fit the format. Here, it literally feels like they're just missing a Z. It's because they used the exact same Dragon Ball's font that they used for Dragon Ball Z. It's used on everything. So to see it with no Z at the end of it just feels off. Maybe that's just me. But to see it without a Z just feels weird. Like, put that Z on there. Even in the Dragon Ball Raging Blast games, when they were called Dragon Ball Raging Blast 1 and 2, those at least had a different font. So you could absorb that was, okay, it's a different whole thing. It's Dragon Ball. Which is funny because Dragon Ball Raging Blast 1 and 2 only used Dragon Ball Z characters. There were no Dragon Ball characters in that game. Just Dragon Ball Z characters. Meanwhile, the Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 1, 2, and 3 use characters from both Dragon Ball Z, and Dragon Ball GT, yet for some reason, they have the name Z at the end of them. You would think it'd be the other way around. You'd think Dragon Ball Tenkaichi's 1, 2, and 3 would have the Dragon Ball name without the Z, and the Raging Blast games would have the Z. Raging Blast 1 and 2 use only Z characters. Even in Raging Blast 2, they used only movie characters and the original Dragon Ball Z characters. They did not use GT characters, and they certainly didn't use Dragon Ball characters. So why do they get to have the Dragon Ball name while the Dragon Ball game that has GT and Dragon Ball characters are using the Z name? That was a whole lot of me talking just to basically go, this makes no schmitz. Shit's making no schmitz. But anyway, moving on. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. I actually find this title to be pretty ironic because with this title, you don't get Dragon Ball Super, which would logically be the next option since Dragon Ball Super is the last series to happen in Dragon Ball, or even the Dragon Ball Daima, because that series hasn't happened yet. But it's funny because if you abbreviate Dragon Ball Super, it translates to DBS, which is what most people will say when they're texting or tweeting about Dragon Ball Super because it's shorter and easy to say. And everybody, even before Twitter existed, used DBZ as its abbreviation for Dragon Ball Z, and we all pretty much understood what that was about. Dragon Ball Z, DBZ. Here, we get a situation where S and Z are combined. The SZ, or the Sparking and the Zero, come together to ironically and coincidentally make DBSZ. It's almost like a fusion of Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super. And there's no need to really go, well, what about OG Dragon Ball? Because Dragon Ball's already in the title. So it's a nice amalgamation of everything. Maybe for marketing purposes, they wanted to use Sparking Zero instead of Tenkaichi 4, because this, in theory, combines all the series together. You've got Dragon Ball, Super, and Z. It's going to be weird in order to implement GT into that, but much like the canon, we just sort of push it out the way. But jokes aside, yes, this game will be, in abbreviation, DBSZ, meaning effectively, it can cause some confusion in tweets, or if you're talking straight up about video games, then it'll cause a laugh of irony because people now know that it's Dragon Ball Super Z or Dragon Ball Z Super, which is what most people called it anyway. I heard a lot of times in America that old fans or young fans would often refer to Dragon Ball Super as Dragon Ball Z Super, which isn't the correct name, obviously, but it was fun because everybody knew that it's basically Dragon Ball Z. That's all it is. And it's fitting because it takes place before the end of Z anyway. So it's still a part of Z. So I find it a delicious irony. Hey, Lightning, it's the exact same thing as Dragon Ball Kai. When that name was in Japanese, it was just called Dragon Ball Kai or Dragon Ball Kai. Dragon Ball Kai. But in America, the name was changed to Dragon Ball Z Kai. The reason being is because it was still the plot to Dragon Ball Z from front to finish, just abridged, just shortened down. And no, I'm not talking about Team 4-Star. I mean abridged as in shorter, not abridged as in it's got fucking jokes with Nappa going, look at me, Vegeta. It's Dragon Ball Z Kai. The difference being the Kai in it. But they decided to keep the Z for Americanized marketing purposes. Honestly, that makes the most sense because in America, most people popularize Z over the original Dragon Ball series. That's not to say Dragon Ball's worse than Dragon Ball Z. It's just, when you ask anybody about Dragon Ball, more than likely your primary fan demographic comes from Z, right? They steal filler in the Kai when you head to the Buu Saga. Yeah, obviously. Like Dragon Ball Heroes. No one ever called it Dragon Ball Super Z. It's the first time I've ever heard someone like that. Oh, you'll definitely hear people call it Dragon Ball Z Super. Because it, originally, if you look at all of it, that's what it is. And Super definitely doesn't help because Super doesn't take any steps to be its own series. Everything about Super is pretty much borrowed from Z. So it makes the most sense that the characters and everything associated with it is just a jump off from Dragon Ball Z. Now, I've been doing a lot of talking, and we're just talking about the name up to this point. But Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. We got the first trailer way back a long, I want to say about a year ago, or almost a year ago. I want to say it's been several months. Several months ago, we got that trailer, and it was mostly just Goku transforming into Super Saiyan Blue on Planet Namek, which is an odd choice, but it's their choice. And Goku seemed to be using the same transformation animation that he uses as mid-Goku when turning Super Saiyan. Now, a while back, I made the statement that personally I'm more hyped for if the game plays more like Dragon Ball Raging Blast. Why? Because effectively and objectively, I believe that Dragon Ball Raging Blast is the better game. I'm sorry, that's just how it is. Sorry. I gotta say it, because Dragon Ball Raging Blast just did a lot of things that fixed Tenkaichi 3. And that's not to disassociate with Tenkaichi 3. Tenkaichi 3 is a really good game in and of itself. I'm not invalidating that. The problem with Tenkaichi 3, though, is that Tenkaichi 3 focused a lot on quantity, but Raging Blast focused more on quality. The quantity of Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi 3 is huge, and they definitely made some improvements on Tenkaichi 2. So kudos to that. The only thing that Tenkaichi 2 did better was music, quite honestly. But Tenkaichi 3, while it made some improvements, Raging Blast made necessary improvements. I'll give one example. All throughout, people kept saying, I can't wait to play as Mid Goku. For those of y'all who don't know what Mid Goku is and thinking, what? Why would I want to play as a worse Goku? No, this was before the term mid was used on Twitter and the internet to popularize something as being bland, mediocre, or not good. Mid in this situation was referring to Goku in the middle of Dragon Ball Z, not Goku when he's fighting Raditz, or even Goku during the first 2 or 3 movies, or even Goku during the end of Dragon Ball fighting against Piccolo Daimao, or Piccolo Jr. as you will. This was referring to a Goku that pretty much takes place in the middle of Dragon Ball Z. Most people more or less speculate that this is a Goku that takes place at the start of the Namekian saga, going all the way up to pretty much when Frieza dies and the Android saga is about to come to a close, with Goku surviving the heart virus right before he does the training. End Goku refers to his fight against Cell all the way up to the end of Dragon Ball Z. Right? So, Mid Goku was very popular in Budokai Tenkaichi 3 because he had a very interesting move set. He used Meteor Combination, which weirdly enough was the move that early Goku should be using, but for some reason didn't have. Because that's a move that Goku used against Piccolo Jr. during the Budokai Tenkaichi, ironically enough. But Mid Goku had it for some reason. He also had the move Meteor Crash. This is when Goku went Super Saiyan 1. When he used this move, he did a punch/kick combo that was in the same fashion that he used on Frieza during their fight on planet Namek. Because this Goku had the most emphasis on cutscene based spectacle moves, visually, this Goku looked the best. This Goku fought the best. This Goku was the popular Goku. And he had a great variation of outfits. He had the outfit that he had when he went to Namek. He had the outfit that he had when he was injured while fighting Frieza. He has the outfit that he had when he returned from planet Namek to meet up with everybody on Earth. The Yardrat outfit, if you will. And then last but not least, he had the outfit that he wore when he fought against Cell. Early Goku has a similar outfit, but with a different kanji. Goku also had the outfit in the end, but it doesn't have the kanji attached to the outfit. It's literally just an orange and blue gi with no master attached to it. Not even his own for some reason. So, the reason that Mid Goku was the most popular was because Mid Goku had the best move set. The other two Gokus had stock move sets. The early Goku had some pretty decent moves, but mostly put emphasis on the Kaioken. Reason being is because that Goku had mostly Kaioken based attacks. It's not till Mid Goku where he cranks it up to use Kaioken times 20 as a Kamehameha, but other than that, his only other primary moves were the Spirit Bomb, and then later on the Super Kamehameha when he turned Super Saiyan. Goku got the Warp Kamehameha towards end mode because that's the move he used against Cell. What does this have to do with Raging Blast, by the way? Well, the reason Raging Blast was so much better was because the reason that they had to have an early Goku, a Mid Goku, and an End Goku was simply because each character already came with set moves. Early Goku had Kaioken attack, other Kaioken attack. No, he had Kaioken attack, Kamehameha, and then after that he had his two power-up moves, which were Kaioken and Gather Energy. After that, he had his ultimate move, which was the Spirit Bomb, meaning that effectively Goku had about 5 moves in his arsenal. That's it. That's all. Mid Goku had times 20 Kamehameha. He had Meteor Combination, he had the Spirit Bomb, Gather Your Energy, and Saiyan Spirit. That's 5 moves at his arsenal. And then when he turned Super Saiyan, he had Saiyan Soul, Wild Sense, Super Kamehameha Chargeable, and then Meteor Combination, and then Angry Kamehameha, the one-armed Kamehameha he uses against Frieza. Right? That was his moveset. And Goku had Super Energy Volley for some ugly ass reason, Kamehameha, Wild Sense again, Saiyan Spirit, and then his ultimate move was Warp Kamehameha. That was his moveset. That's what he had. So, why does this matter? Why does any of that matter? Okay, those are movesets effective based on which Goku used what moves in what timeline. This sounds pretty efficient, right? Kinda. See, the thing about Raging Blast was that Raging Blast decided to avoid this problem altogether, simply by making it so that you can customize Goku's supers. That's right. If you could select Goku in Raging Blast 1 or 2, all of his moves were available when you unlocked them. And thus, this means you can add any combinations of moves you want. Goku can still only use 5 moves. 2 of them are support moves, 2 of them are supers, and 1 of them an ultimate. But this time around, you can equip any one you want. You can have Goku use the Meteor Combination that he uses as early Goku. You can have Goku use the times 20 Kamehameha that he uses as mid Goku. You can have Goku use a combination of any of those moves, or have Goku use the Super Energy Volley that he used on Cell. That's in Goku's move. But you can also have that Goku use Meteor Crash, the move that he used on Frieza. So long as you switch and swap any of those moves, it doesn't matter. You can have Goku use Saiyan Soul. You can have Goku use Solar Flare. You can switch any of those support moves around. You can have Goku use Now I'm Angry, the support move. You can have Goku use Gather Your Energy and combine that with Kaioken. Any combination was possible. And for some characters, you could switch out their ultimate moves. You can have Goku use the regular Spirit Bomb or the Super Spirit Bomb that he used on Kid Buu. This means that you didn't need to separate Goku into 3 separate characters. Just use the Goku that's customized for what you like, your fighting style. This essentially reduced 3 Gokus into 1 Goku, saving time, programming, effort, and allows for some flavor on your part as the player to decide which type of Goku you want to use. That's why Raging Blast was better. It allowed for free-range customization of moves. Tenkaichi, once you select a character, you're stuck with that move set. That's a case in point. And that extended to just a lot of characters, not just Goku. I only use Goku because Goku's one of the few characters, much like Vegeta and Piccolo, that have multiple variants of themselves. But say, for example, you've got Yamcha or Tien, who had a limited moveset to begin with. Now they have more variety. You want Yamcha to use Wolf Fang Fist and Wolf Fang Strike, 2 Wolf Fang attacks, customize them both to Yamcha. That way Yamcha has more variety in his physical moves. That way you can increase his physical moves. But if you increase his blast, then you can have Yamcha use the Kamehameha more often rather than the Wolf Fang Fist. You have those options. Yamcha had more variety. Yamcha could use Kamehameha and regular Spirit Ball because his ultimate move was Super Spirit Ball, the bigger one. And because you had these options, you were allowed to create a better character. Yamcha is no longer restrained to the moves that he had in Tenkaichi 3. Selecting Yamcha doesn't mean, oh, I'm stuck with power up to the very limit, false courage. No, it wasn't false courage. He used After Image Strike. After Image Strike, power up to the very limit, Wolf Fang Fist, Kamehameha, and Super Spirit Ball, or Sokidan in the Japanese version. Now, he can use Wolf Fang Fist, he can use secondary Wolf Fang Fist, Spirit Ball, Kamehameha, or any of his other variations of support moves, plus the Super Spirit Ball as his ultimate move. Diversity. Thy name is Raging Blast. Point 1 for Raging Blast. But that's not even the beginning. One of the irritating things that Budokai Tenkaichi 3 had was the how am I going to use this ultimate move? Well, that's simple. If you played the game 1,000 times, if you play Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3, then you know damn well you have to press L2 triangle up or L2 triangle side or L2 triangle and down to use your ultimate move. Stupid. Just a bunch of unnecessary buttons that you have to press. What do you have to do in Raging Blast to do your supers and ultimates? Hold the L trigger button and press one of the buttons, and then you're good. You can just use the move. You're good. You don't have to do all that other bullshit. I would like to argue that's a bit better. It just gives you an option of moves to use. They're a lot better. You can even press a button to pull up the menu, but once you realize and have your brain memorized on what each move is, you'll be able to just press them automatically. There's no need to press all those other unnecessary things, but it allows for you to automatically know them. You don't have to press L2 triangle up and all that other nonsense. You can just press 2 buttons. You're good. Tenkaichi 3 had you do that unnecessary bullshit. It takes even a tiny millisecond for your fingers to adjust to each of those buttons. That's time the opponent could take whooping your ass. Whereas in Raging Blast, press a button, you're good. You got it. It even allowed for you to quickly react and use your move at the same time they use theirs so that you can at least struggle your way out of problems. Raging Blast even had more struggles. Now, I know for Sparking Zero, hopefully they don't have you use analog battles because analog battles are going to take their toll on controllers. PlayStation 5 controllers already have a problem with analog drift anyway, so it's very clear that they're going to have that problem if you play with the same mechanics that you used in Tenkaichi 3 and in some degree Raging Blast. Here, the problem can be avoided altogether by making it either A button masher, or B, and I know this one's going to be irritating, set up a pattern of buttons, and whoever solves the pattern first wins the skirmish. Yeah, it sucks, because it means if you get a more complicated pattern than your opponent, it essentially means they win, but part of this is luck, so let's be honest with each other, right? Or it could allow for being energy-based. For example, if you get into a struggle, but you have more energy than your opponent, it means that the skirmish will be a lot easier for you than your opponent. It makes sense. Your opponent is tired, so they're going to have to realistically harder time getting out of that skirmish. But, for example, let's say you enter a sparking mode, just like in Raging Blast where you can enter a raging mode. If you play Raging Blast 2, you can enter a rage mode, which changes the sky. If you enter this, then you have an easier time to get out of a button skirmish than your opponent does. It's your reward for basically going all out. It makes the most sense, right? That's at least what I think should happen. Anything other than making you spin your analog sticks. That was fun at the time, but it was also used at a time where realistically our controllers were made of much tougher stuff. And even then, those controllers were getting damaged a lot due to Tenkaichi 3. Hell, Budokai 3 did damage on analog sticks. So it would make sense that we upgrade to that system. It sucks. It makes the fights seem like they're not as personal because we're not exerting all of our energy into the analog sticks. But it makes the most sense because we still want those struggles, because it's a Dragon Ball Z game. It wouldn't look right if we didn't have them. But we got to put some level of structure behind it so that we don't bust up controllers. Controllers on average cost about $76.76. If you add your warranty to it so you can swap it out for a year, that adds $55 to the controller for warranty if you buy it at a GameStop, which means that you're spending well over $90 on one controller. $91.73 if you want the exact number. So realistically, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and just make it a button combination situation. I think that would make the most sense. At least I hope that would. A button masher would be good too. The problem with button mashers though is that those can wind up doing damage to the input system of the controller. Unless you're ready to, again, swap out a bunch of controllers or have your square or X button malfunction on you randomly, I say this is the best route. Now, All of those things are being addressed. So, Tyrone, what you're saying is, if we do some of those things, one, we can reduce the amount of Gokus. Yes and no. Goku, unfortunately, is one of the few characters I feel like there's no other way around it. You're still going to have multiple of, just because of how Dragon Ball Z does marketing and handles certain characters, and only so much can fit into one video game. Goku's the type of character that's gone through tons of transformations and life events that realistically, there's only one way to put him in video games, and that's to give him multiple variants, at least in the Dragon Ball games, because too much has happened in his life to realistically make just one of him. I mean, even in the series, there's multiple Gokus. They all just have different names, like Bardock and Goten and shit. But they're all Gokus. Let's be real with ourselves. So, like I said in my character roster video, which if you haven't seen, it's on my YouTube channel, so make sure you guys go check that out. I state that there should be different Gokus based on his powering system of transformations. What do I mean by this? Well, essentially that means we should have a God Goku and a regular Goku. Regular Goku will do all of the things that he did in Dragon Ball Z, obviously. But God Goku is pretty much based on the shit in Dragon Ball Super. So that pretty much means that Goku will be able to use Goku Super Saiyan God Red or Goku Super Saiyan Blue, as well as Ultra Instinct. Or Ultra Instinct Mastered if you want to use that form. So yeah, there's the link to my first rosters video I made, and I'm going to send the link to my second rosters video as well. When you get the time, you can go ahead and watch those on your spare time. But yeah, there's other characters I feel should take on this route too. Obviously, you got Vegeta, because Vegeta's gone through a lot over his progression of time, and it's realistically unreasonable to say that Vegeta would just have one variant of himself. He'll more than likely have multiple. I mean, we're not even counting Baby Vegeta, which is a completely different character, but it's still Vegeta, right? Then you got Majin Vegeta, which realistically doesn't feel right to add him into the same as regular Vegeta. You could go the Budokai 3 route and make him his own character, but I think it's realistically safe to say it's better to make Majin Vegeta Majin Vegeta. Other than that, in the trailer, we see that there's a lot of other characters that actually make appearances from Dragon Ball Super. We see Jiren, so obviously we know Jiren's going to make an appearance. We see Broly, but we see the Broly from Dragon Ball Super. That one's pretty obvious, which means in parentheses, it's going to say Broly, and then in parentheses, Super. Honestly, I think it'd be a nice little nudge or hilarious joke in America to have Broly from Dragon Ball Z be spelled B-R-O-L-Y, while Dragon Ball Super's Broly is spelled B-R-O-L-I, much like his broccoli-based counterpart, right? Because his name is Broccoli. One thing I do hope that they do, which is going to be very hard because it's going to require a lot of voice acting and a lot of programming, interactive cutscenes upon the fight starting. For example, if Goku meets Gohan, he'll say the exact same thing, like, "All right, Gohan, show me what you got." And Gohan's like, "All right, Dad, here I come," or stuff like that. Xenoverse already did it as well. "I'm going to surpass you, Dad. Bring it on, Gohan." That stuff, right? Well, obviously, there's a lot of characters that are going to be in Sparking Zero. And yes, we know they're not going to come in regular fashion. They're more than likely going to come in DLC packs, because that's just the video game way now. Fighting games don't release characters by you having to unlock them under certain situations. That, unfortunately, was back in the PlayStation 2 era when you had to actually work to get stuff in video games. Now we're going to be unlocking characters via DLC, which I'm mixed on this. On the one hand, this does mean that if you're dedicated enough, you can get all of the characters, and thus, if you invite a friend to play online, then you'll have all the characters available. If you ever play in locals or in a tournament, which I don't know if this game's going to be popular enough to wind up having locals or tournaments, it'll probably have small-time money matches in your, like, hometown arcades or hometown video game clubs, and you can like do tournaments there. But I doubt that this game will ever reach Evo status. If it does, I'm going to be wildly surprised, and that'll be something interesting to look into. But if this game does get competitive, then obviously you can use your copy of the game because it'll have all the characters included in it. But that would presume that you are using your PlayStation or whatever gaming system that you're using rather than them just using a gaming system already provided. If a tournament provides it, I would assume they have all the characters. But that's why DLC is easier. You can just buy the characters and thus you'll have your entire full roster. The downside to this, though, unfortunately means that you don't get the chance to personally earn them. One of the things that most fans like about Dragon Ball games in general was the chance to earn the characters, because sometimes the way you earn the characters was based on the relevancy of how you earn them. For example, if you want to earn Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, you simply have to fight off against Cell. If you fight Cell and beat him, you get Super Saiyan 2 Gohan. And it makes sense because Gohan fought Cell at Super Saiyan 2. There's a relevance there. Or there were some that were a bit more obscure. To unlock Chi-Chi, you would have to play the story as Kid Goku and get to a certain point in the story. This makes sense because Chi-Chi was introduced to Goku when he was a kid, right? It was just those little connections that you could make. Some characters were unlockable via the Z Store, where you had to buy them, but even that made things a little muddy, but to the very least it allowed for unlockables. The best way unlockables were used were in Budokais 2 and 3. For example, in Budokai 2, in order to unlock Videl, you had to basically have Hercule fight Majin Buu during map 7. The reason you have to do this is because the relevancy is there. Super Buu won't kill Hercule. Reason being is because he's still attached to Hercule. They're friends. Much like how Buu hesitated to kill Videl because Videl is the daughter of Hercule / Mr. Satan. So naturally in the video game, your reward for this encounter is the unlocking of Videl. Makes sense, right? This allowed for the player to learn a little bit more about the story or have a nice Easter egg or a nudge to the actual animated series / manga, and thus allowed it to progress and feel more connected to the character and the player. This is what made the show and the games work well in tangent. So it naturally makes sense that that would happen. Here, however, this means that you would have to earn each and every character, but we're much in the era now where the internet can give you a tutorial or you can look up how to unlock any characters. This isn't the olden days where the internet was scarce and very much on dial-up, where you had to basically look up how to unlock characters and be lucky if you find the right thing, or if you had to do a word on the street with your kid friends in the playground going, I heard this guy who knew this guy who knew this guy who knew this guy at Namco Bandai who's friends with his cousin on how to unlock Super Saiyan 5 Gogeta. You have to play as Gogeta and fight off against Kid Buu 10 times. You know, obscure shit like that just wouldn't work. It effectively just had you waste your time. One of the other things I'm looking forward to, though, is alternate costumes and outfits. The reason these were so relevant was because it allowed you to have some variety and allowed you to put a little flash on it. I like Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball FighterZ, the game, but the problem with Dragon Ball FighterZ game was that the design changes were nice little nudges, but they didn't really have the characters change outfits. The issue with this was because, yeah, some of those outfit changes were, some of those palette swaps, were nice, but they weren't exactly costume changes. And it's been a while since we've had a game that allowed costume changes, not counting Xenoverse or Xenoverse 2, because that was pretty much a Dragon Ball Z MMO game where you can customize your character to pretty much be however you want. And if not, if you choose to use the characters from the actual series, the only ones that got character design changes were ones that were noticeably character design changes throughout the series. AKA, you can have Goku wear the outfit that he wore in Dragon Ball Super during the Resurrection F arc, but the only reason you can have that, also thank you Navy for the gift subs. The only reason that you were able to even have that Goku was because that was the Goku that was used in that particular part of the series, and that Goku's moveset was limited to that part of the series. Which means, yeah, you get a character, you get an outfit change, but you lose out on the freedom to use whatever Goku you want. You're restricted to that Goku. Which means that, yeah, you get your character change outfit, but unfortunately it's limited. Let's go back to Raging Blast 1 and 2. Raging Blast 1 and 2 allows you to change the character's outfits and can't change the move set. This means that you can have Goku wear the same outfit that he wore when he fought against Raditz and Piccolo Jr. It's the one where he basically took off his cufflinks, his shoes, and his undershirt. You can have that Goku, but still have him turn Super Saiyan 3, which was vastly interesting. It means that you can use Goku in a completely different way. You were able to freely customize him however you want it. And I hope that Sparking Zero allows for the exact same level of freedom. Hell, I hope that they break the mold and have characters wear outfits that they never even worn, but outfits that kind of match their style. Budokai 1 did this really well, where Goku was wearing a brown jacket with a black tan undershirt, as well as some jeans and some black shoes. He's never wore that outfit ever in the series, but they decided to do it there, and they did it because it just looks different on Goku. It was original. They did this for even characters that don't live on Earth but wore Earth styles. Zarbon in Dragon Ball Z Budokai 1 wore this like Mexican dancer's outfit that had a rose attached to it and some black pants. The reason this looked so good though was because Zarbon would wear some shit like that. It made perfect sense for him to wear that. Some characters got variations of their armor, but other characters like Vegeta got a black jacket with an orange shirt and black pants, which funny enough wound up becoming the outfit that Vegeta winds up wearing at the end of Dragon Ball Z. So weirdly, it's a situation where the game thought of the outfit first and the anime and manga implemented it after the fact, which I find fitting. Unless you actually read the manga, then you would know Vegeta wore that outfit, but you didn't get to see the orange shirt. So as far as I'm concerned, Budokai 1 either A, knew this would be Vegeta's NZ outfit, or B, they made this outfit first and then color-coded it later to match it in the anime. There were other interesting outfits like this. Gohan wore a wore the like homeschool outfit. Goten wore like that Chinese outfit that Chi-Chi made for him. There's so many different like variations and fun stuff that they tried. Krillin wore like this the same pretty much outfit that he wore heading to Namek. Yeah, it's just a bunch of interesting experiments that they decided to do with each of the characters, and I want to see that more. I definitely want to see characters play around with that option a lot more so that we can see characters utilize those. Hell, even Android 17 wound up wearing the very same outfit that he wore at the end of Z. It's the brown like jacket coat thing that he wore, the brown coat with the jeans and the shoes. So that's what I want to see. I want to see characters wear some fun variations on outfits. I hope they don't limit themselves to literally only having the characters wear outfits that they used in the show. It would be fun to see the characters wear casual outfits. You don't really see that in video games anymore. Even One Piece Grand Battle, I know I just picked a random game, had characters wear outfits that they normally wouldn't wear. The most recent time we've seen this is in the Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm games, where the characters wear like swimsuits and other various outfits, school uniforms and crap like that. But they wore those because the game decided to throw those in. I wouldn't mind if they be DLC, but I kind of wish they would just like make them regular outfits. I see no reason why they have to be DLC. I guess it would be reward for a player going above and beyond, but we've already established DLC doesn't require work, it just requires you to pay money. But let's go even further into Dragon Ball Sparking Zero and what are the expectations and why I believe certain things should go over others. Well, one, we see that in Raging Blast, one of the games that I said was better, one of the reasons I said it was better isn't just because you can switch out super moves. You can also do teamed super attacks, which technically you could do in Tenkaichi 3, but those team attacks didn't require that the person be on your team. Raging Blast requires the characters to be on your team, so it felt personal. For example, if you use the full Nelson special beam cannon, which was Goku and Piccolo's move if they team up together, full Nelson pretty much meant that Goku would grab the character and put them in a full Nelson. Piccolo would shoot them with the special beam cannon. This move was an automatic one-hit KO move for the opponent, but you lose Goku too. Reason being is because Goku's holding himself on the opponent and he's sacrificing himself for the special beam cannon to land. Makes sense. One of the ultimate moves was probably the best ultimate move in the game, but it requires 3 characters: Kid Gohan, Krillin, and early Goku or Goku. This move pretty much made it so that Krillin would absorb the power of Goku. Actually, no. It was Goku had to be knocked out first. Then Krillin would absorb the energy of the Spirit Bomb. Krillin would launch the Spirit Bomb at the opponent, and if the opponent dodges it, Kid Gohan bounces the Spirit Bomb back, hits the opponent, and it's an automatic one-hit kill. You lose Goku, though, because Goku's required to get knocked out in order to use the move. But the attack is debatably the strongest attack in the game. I love creativity like this, and I hope that Sparking Zero decides to do this too. For example, if you use Gotenks' ultimate move by himself, it's just a move that does a decent amount of damage. But if you pair him up with Piccolo, then you can use the Ultra Boo Boo Ball attack. Gotenks will use the move, and Piccolo will set up the serve. Gotenks knocks the move down, and it does more damage than if Gotenks had did the move regularly. This makes sense. It's because Piccolo was involved in the move to begin with. When it comes to anime being adapted to video game format, what you prefer way to play anime video games and why? Well, I think we're talking about it right now. The reason I'm even bringing this discussion up is because debatably the Tenkaichi / Raging Blast is like open arena, flying around fighter games are the best way to implement the anime. Now, don't get me wrong, I like Arc System's fighting style as well too, but it's very heavily competitive. That's not to say this isn't either. Any video game can be competitive. Hell, you can play competitive Pong. If it exists, there's someone who's going to dedicate hours upon hours upon hours to getting competitive with it. But Dragon Ball Sparking Zero allowed for a little bit more freedom in your movements if you're playing casually. There were a lot more people who played Tenkaichi series casually than people who were playing it competitively. Don't get me wrong, after years have passed and people have online modded the shit out of Tenkaichi 3, Tenkaichi wound up becoming a competitive game due to very dedicated fans. But for the most part, there's still a casual audience into this, and it's very much a casual style gameplay for the most part. There's things in Dragon Ball that are dangerously out of balance when it comes to the combat style. For example, if you use Gogeta or Kid Buu, you're more than likely going to wind up doing the most damage because Kid Buu is one of the fastest characters in the game and dishes out the most damage with Planet Burst. Gogeta at Super Saiyan 4 does the most damage in Budokai Tenkaichi 3, not counting ultimate or one-hit kill moves. Or Devilman using his Devil Beam against, say, Omega Shenron or Kid Buu. So when you take into those factors, obviously there's some wildly outbalanced shit in the Tenkaichi series. In Budokai Tenkaichi 3, if you use Yajirobe, Videl, and pretty much any human character against a Great Ape character, you've basically lost. Why? Because high-speed rush or close combat moves don't work on giant ape characters. There's only a few exceptions. Those being Goku's Super Saiyan 3 Super Dragon Fist technique or Tapion Slash. Those are the only two moves recorded that are high-speed rush moves that can be used on giant characters. But that's another thing I want to talk about. I know this is going to suck, but honestly, I think giant characters should be excluded from the game altogether. I know. I'm sorry. It's just those characters pretty much mean an L for anybody who's using a specific character that's outside of that range. Now, granted, I don't think they should be completely omitted from the game. I think there needs to be like a Dragon Ball Kaiju mode or something that allows you to use those characters specifically for that mode, or you can use those characters and you can have a team. Or, and this is a big or, you can use a giant character, but that giant character takes up about 3 spaces. It's completely absurd that you can use King Vegeta in Giant Great Ape form, Raditz in Giant Great Ape form, Nappa in Giant Great Ape form, Janemba in Fat form, and Hirudegarn all in one team of 5. If you don't know, by the way, Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichis 2 and 3 decided to do a team system where characters do 5v5. Raging Blast followed up on this by doing the exact same thing. You can have up to 5 characters on a team. Once all 5 characters are knocked out, you basically lose, and if you knock out all 5 characters the opponent has, you win. The reason they did 5 on 5 was because it made the most sense. 2 characters can tag team to do the character team moves, and it also meant that you had a full roster, almost like a Pokemon team, if you will. You had 5 characters in total. You can choose who can be your starter, like Yamcha, but you can choose to be your back end, someone who's very strong that can probably bring the rear. Character stats are wildly unbalanced in Budokai Tenkaichi 3 and in some cases in Raging Blast. In Raging Blast and in Tenkaichi 3, you had characters like Gogeta who had 5 bars of health, meanwhile Chaozu has 2. Reason, he's shorter and weaker. He also doesn't do as much damage. The only thing he had going for him was his telekinesis move. But again, this is diving wildly into the competitive aspect. But it's also knowing that if you choose this character, you're more than likely going to win because these characters have the most health. I honestly don't mind Dragon Ball having the battle point system that they used in certain Dragon Point battles. What those were was that you could use a character, but that character had a battle power point. So the idea was that both players had a certain amount of points. If you use Gogeta at Super Saiyan 4, Gogeta at Super Saiyan 4 had about 15 Dragon Ball battle points, meaning that he took up a lot of space. That means if you use him, you can only use about 2 more characters. This makes sense. Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta is the strongest character, so he naturally costs the most points to use. The other characters are weaker, so they cost less points to use. At this point, this means can you win a fight using 3 characters while the opponent has the luxury of using 5 characters? They're just all balanced out. That means you gotta either A, hold it out really hard with your weaker characters, making your stronger characters be the stronger ones. What's up, games? Or 2, you need to make your weaker characters lose fast and have your power characters bring up the rear, right? I wouldn't mind that system, but for giant characters, you can use Hirudegarn if you want to, but using Hirudegarn means that you can't use all 5 characters. Hirudegarn would take up 3 spaces. He's a giant character. He does more damage. He takes less damage. He can't flinch like normal characters can when being hit by basic punches and kicks. And he can't be hit with high-speed rush moves. He can only be hit by blast moves. So it would make the most sense that he is the most resistant but costs the most slots to use. That's how I feel that should go. It brings a level of reasonability and structure. What about other things? I honestly think that some characters, even though this is going to be a very large roster, I wouldn't be opposed to characters having their own made-up ultimate and super moves. That makes the most sense. Why? Because we've already had that in other Tenkaichi games. Hell, a lot of the characters that they played in Tenkaichis 2 and 3 never really had that much fight time during the actual anime and manga. So the game decided to give certain characters moves. Like, for example, Fasha. Fasha, or Sepulpa, never fought for real in Dragon Ball Z. She made a brief appearance in Dragon Ball Z Bardock the Father of Goku OVA, but she never had a fight with any individual. She mostly got nuked by Dodoria, right? So, because of that, they gave her her own moves. They even went out of their way in order to give her her own giant ape form. So I wouldn't mind creativity on Dragon Ball Z's half, or Dragon Ball Sparking Zero's half, by giving the character the ability to make up their own moves or have customizable moves of their own. Moves that are exclusively in this game. We already know there's going to be video game exclusive characters that show up like Android 21. This is their chance to play around with more of those moves. Have characters new and old play around with moves that they never used in their source material. Add adult Gotenks, I wouldn't mind that. And I also even wouldn't mind a guest character from another series. They've done that before. Dragon Ball Z Battle of Z actually has Goku wearing Naruto's outfit and Naruto wearing Goku's gi in Naruto's game. Honestly, I don't think they need to add too many characters from Heroes, though. Reason being is because Heroes is its own game. I don't think it needs to bleed that much into Sparking Zero. Otherwise, you just wind up having a Fan Mugen game. And that's too much. One character from Heroes is enough. Beat. Put Beat in. That's it. Why? Beat's been through a lot. I think Beat needs to go ahead and be in the game. Beat started off Dragon Ball Heroes, and he's gotten older. At this point, I wouldn't mind if he's able to be in the game, but make his voice very stock. Something that doesn't have much weight on it, but the trade-off will be that he can learn the most stock moves. Yeah, they're stock moves, but this is pretty much a nod to the ability to customize Beat in any way you want. Essentially, we're making him the Mii fighter of Dragon Ball, and I'm okay with that. Original attacks. Teach Gohan Special Beam Cannon and give Vegeta instant transmission. I don't think Vegeta needs instant transmission. That's an exclusive Goku move. And I guess Kid Buu because he learned it real fast in Cell. But I like that Vegeta doesn't know it. It reflects on the fact that he doesn't need to constantly do everything Goku does. The only character from Heroes we need to have is Vidro. Yeah, I guess. Some people would probably debate that Fu needs to be in there to counter Beat, which would be cool, but whatever. Other than that, yeah. And then I know a lot of people would probably want Shallot in the game because, and I even made that in my rosters video on YouTube that Shallot could be in the game. But again, I don't want too many other games bleeding into Sparking Zero. I wouldn't mind it if it be promotional material. For example, if you play Dragon Ball Legends, right? And you play a certain match in Dragon Ball Legends with Shallot and you win it, then you get a special code. Or if you download Dragon Ball Legends, then you get a code. What does that code do? Well, if you redeem that code in the PlayStation Network, you unlock Shallot. Or if you use that code in like a redemption system on Sparking Zero, you get Shallot. Same for Dokkan Battle. Maybe there's this exclusive character in Dokkan Battle. If you log into Dokkan Battle, that's your reward for having the game. Is that you get to use a certain character from Dokkan Battle onto there. That would make the most sense. But, moving on to it, honestly, I think there shouldn't be too many characters from other games in Sparking Zero. The Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi games have a lot of characters in them already, and they even have original like transformations and stuff. I feel like adding too much will muddy up the quality of the game. One of the big like appeals to Dragon Ball Z Sparking series is that it has a lot of characters. But the downside of having a lot of characters is that unfortunately, the more characters you add, the less time you have to add things upon each character. This was one of the reasons why Raging Blast was better, because Raging Blast had less characters. They still had a large roster, but they had less characters, which means they had more time to focus on each character. They had time to fully utilize the customization methods. They had time to fully utilize how this character moves, how this character acts, how this character plays. In Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3, you only get about 4 to 5 available combos for each of the characters, and they all are based off certain button combinations, but more or less are the same. Meanwhile, in Dragon Ball Raging Blast 1 and 2, each character had their own signature move. If you press the circle/B button. Circle button if you're playing the PlayStation, B button if you're playing the Xbox version. What did this do exactly? What this allowed for characters to do was essentially do their own twist. For example, Goku had the instant transmission, which means you could do a combo, and the moment that yellow flash appeared across the screen and you pressed the signature move right at that time, that was your chance to connect whatever starting combo you had with your signature move to connect the next move over. You could use any combination of things so long as they had that yellow flash to connect those combo moves together. These things were known as cancels. Sometimes a red flash would happen, which means you could technically combine the combo. Unfortunately, your opponent had a way to get out. These were much slower, but they dealt more damage. but your character had a chance to cancel and teleport out of them. So, because of that, Raging Blast just did a better job with the characters. Some characters did have signature moves that copied others. For example, Vegeta and Vegeta and, what's his name? Tarble. Vegeta and Tarble had the exact same signature move. Tarble's move was weaker. But again, that's only because Tarble was never a fighter to begin with. So he essentially wound up in the game, but was given a signature move essentially to copy Vegeta or be a lesser form of Vegeta. A weaker version, if you will. With the only original move he had being the one where he calls upon his ship to crash down on you. Which took a lot of originality from their part because Tarble never did that in the OVA. So, with that being said, yeah, he was mostly just put in as a special promotional of, hey, this OVA that happened a long time ago. I kind of wish that they would dub that damn OVA. I mean, hell, they dubbed the One Piece, Dragon Ball Z, and Toriko OVA, and that OVA came out years ago, which means they can dub the Yo Goku and His Friends Return OVA. Not sure why they haven't. But anyway, with that being said, I think they could definitely take that route, and it definitely wouldn't hurt. The only other thing that I would want them to do, though, is that it would make for more available cancellations and combos for each character to use based on what they can and can't do. Say, for example, when Trunks reaches Ultra Super Saiyan transformation, or Super Saiyan Grade 3, if you will, he can do less canceled combos, but his damage and defense are obviously higher. His energy consumption is higher, but his blast moves do more damage. Why? Because that's the downside of the Ultra Super Saiyan transformation, right? As we can see in this game, they have definitely split up certain characters. For example, Trunks from Dragon Ball Super is going to be in the game, but Trunks from Dragon Ball Z is still in the game, as well as his varying outfits. Trunks with no sword, Trunks with sword, Trunks Dragon Ball Super, and more than likely Trunks Dragon Ball GT. I really, really hope that this will be GT Goten's first game appearance, because goddammit, they still haven't put GT Goten in a game. Yeah, they still haven't. Dragon Ball GT Final Bout didn't do it. Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 2 didn't do it. Tenkaichi 3 didn't do it. Infinite World didn't do it. You would think they would have done it by this point. They did not. So, hopefully that does happen. Now, what about the story mode? So, from what we see, Raditz is probably going to wind up being at the start of this story again, which I know Raditz right now is crying because he's like, God damn it, the players got to kick my ass again at the start of it. Here's how I think this should probably go. Dragon Ball has a much larger story at this point. A way larger story than it had when Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichis 1, 2, and 3 came out. Or hell, even Budokai 1, 2, and 3, if you want to go that far. So much has happened. We've gotten Dragon Ball Super. We've gotten Dragon Ball Daima that's coming up. We've got so much now. It's realistically hard for us to straight up go, yeah, that's what we should do. Make it be the original Dragon Ball Z story. Yeah? No, I think they start with the original Dragon Ball. The problem is if we start from the original Dragon Ball, the game is going to take a really long time to beat. Now, granted, that's good. That means more content, right? Kinda. The problem here is that if they do that, then people who already watched read the manga and watched the show have been through this already. If you play Budokai's 1, 2, 3, Tenkaichi 1, Tenkaichi 2, Tenkaichi 3, Infinite World, fucking other Dragon Ball games that are outside of the Budokai series. If you played, sorry, I'm tripping. If you played literally any Dragon Ball Z games, hell, if you played Burst Limit, if you played Battle of Z, if you played any of the Legacy Goku 1, 2, or Blue's Fury, you know how this goes. The series, Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, Dragon Ball Super. We've seen this, Dragon Ball Kai. We've seen this happen so many times. Dragon Ball Kakarot is literally the last game to come out pretty much Yeah, it came out after Fighters. So we know how this story goes. And at least with Dragon Ball Kakarot, that story's not that great because it's literally the Dragon Ball Z story. But the problem is, we've seen it. And at least Dragon Ball Kakarot decided to use, I think it was Cyber Connect. Cyber Connect worked on that game, which means that the cutscenes are a lot better. But other than cinematic cutscenes, the game itself was bland. So if we do this again, it means we're just playing the fucking story again. Imagine if you've only played the Dragon Ball Z games. Let's say you never watched the anime or read the manga. Then you would be playing the exact same story over 10 different times. I'm not even including the other goddamn games like Ultimate Tenkaichi or fucking Dragon Ball Sagas or Super Dragon Ball Z. Like, we've done this story too many damn times. If you do this story this many times, then yeah, it tells the story, but we already had Cyber Connect do a better job with the cutscenes. So Sparking Zero's only going to do the exact same thing, which means the player is going to be playing the exact same thing. Xenoverse 1 and 2 at least have a somewhat original story, but even they are doing the exact same shit. The difference there is that it's ironic. You're doing the same story over, but things happen to deviate the plot away because evil has corrupted the timeline, making it different, and it's your job to make sure everything happens the exact same way as the manga. Essentially, it's Enter the Spider-Verse before Enter the Spider-Verse happened. It's a canon event, right? Here, what we're doing is just going through the motions. If Sparking Zero starts from Raditz or even starts from Dragon Ball, you gotta do the exact same shit all over again. You want to make it like Dragon Ball FighterZ. And that's a good point, Fox. Dragon Ball FighterZ had their own original story, and I wouldn't be opposed to that. Especially considering the large roster that we're getting in this game. If we have such a large roster, then I definitely do not oppose of having the game have its own original story. We've got the characters, we can do it. Now, you're probably asking yourself, well, if we do its own original story, then that means we can only use the characters that are currently active within the current Dragon Ball timeline. That means we can't use Kid Goku. That means we can't use GT characters at all. And that means we definitely can't use Daima because that story hasn't even happened yet. And that story won't even end by the time Dragon Ball Sparking Zero comes out. So you're thinking to yourself, well, how do you make an original story and still utilize the other characters from said story? Even Dragon Ball FighterZ suffered from this problem. Most of the characters that are DLC weren't included in the original Dragon Ball FighterZ story at all. In fact, none of the DLC characters are in Dragon Ball FighterZ at all. Trunks isn't a DLC character at all in Dragon Ball FighterZ, but you cannot use Trunks at all. Why? Because Trunks never made an appearance in Dragon Ball FighterZ story because it takes place after Dragon Ball, well, it takes place in the middle of Dragon Ball Super, which means Trunks never gets the chance to make an appearance. Beerus can't interfere in the plot, which means Beerus never makes an appearance in that at all, despite the fact that he shows up in cutscenes. Whis shows up in cutscenes too, but Whis, for some reason, isn't playable in Dragon Ball FighterZ. In fact, the only game that Whis is playable in as of current, if we're talking about main Dragon Ball Z games, is Dragon Ball Battle of Z. Yeah, that's the only game Whis is playable in. So weird. So yeah, what do we do about this? Well, it's complicated. You could, in theory, have a situation where we enter the timelines. Doesn't even appear in Xenoverse. You could, in theory, have a situation where you enter the timelines and you play original stories based on what's happening there. But then, at that point, you might as well just be playing the original story. So what to do in this situation? What to do? You could have the characters go down different routes. Budokai Tenkaichi 3 kinda did this, where you would play a certain story. the game will tell you to press R3, basically press down on the analog stick. If you pressed it, then the game went by exactly the same way it happened in the story. If you don't press it, then another route will happen. For example, in the fight against Broly, basically recreating movie 8, the characters fought against Broly. Goku gathers up everybody's energy. This is when you're supposed to press R3. But if you don't press R3, Master Roshi shows up instead. You get to use Master Roshi and fight off against Broly. This is pretty much a nod to the movie where Master Roshi shows up in front of Broly and decides while he's drunk to wear a bunch of different masks while he's powered up in his muscle form. It's a pointless, funny scene that has nothing to do with anything and doesn't resolve the plot, but it's a nudge to it, and basically they switch it over so that Master Roshi's the one that fought Broly, and Master Roshi hilariously goes, "Broccoli, it's all over!" Pretty much to go off the deep end to say Master Roshi in his drunken stupor was able to beat Broly. It's an event that doesn't happen in the movie, but it's a fun little nod of what happens in the movie while taking it a different route. This is definitely a very interesting way you can come at it. You can have the characters be utilized in current fighting events, but have them deviate from the story in different ways. You can have a Dragon Ball series, you can have the Z series, and you can have the Dragon Ball Super series and the GT series, and then while you're in those stories, you change them up in different ways, much like in Tenkaichi 3. But instead of going through the motions all around, you can pretty much decide to run around the story in any way you want. That's pretty much the only viable way I see this being utilized, to where you feel like you're actually being interactive with the story without actually having to deal with the problems of the story. Because no one wants to go through the motions of the story again. The issue here is that if you play Sparking Zero, one of the worst things you can do is make Goku fight Raditz all over again and go through the whole story. There's nothing wrong with the Dragon Ball story, it's just you're going to be doing this yet again. And that can be taxing. Especially if a player already knows how this shit goes. Playing the story over and over and over and over again. This is Dragon Ball, a series that is old as hell, and we know how it goes. So at this point, what do you do with this story? It's one of the reasons why I didn't really care for them making another Tenkaichi game, because making another Tenkaichi game in this day and age realistically isn't going to hold up as much water as it normally would in most situations. It's just like when you bring back Toonami. Toonami was a great series, was a great time slot in Cartoon Network, but that was during the day and age where we didn't have access to the internet, and thus being able to watch all these animes was fun because it was in one segment of the day that you knew you could watch it in when you were a child out of school. But now you have work. There is no school, and thus you have responsibilities that you have to take care of. Toonami more or less seems like an afterthought that you can't catch up with. Why watch Toonami when you can just binge watch a bunch of anime when you have some free time on Crunchyroll or any other anime website? Much like Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi. The novelty of Tenkaichi was there only because we had very limited internet, no access to online play for real. And even when we did have access to online play, it was very limited in Raging Blast 1 and 2, and for the most part it was still pretty casual. Yeah, you had your competitive players here and there, but realistically there was a way to play off of it. Here, we're in a situation now where the internet is a plentiful, and thus the very thing that, pardon the pun, sparks with Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi starts to lose it in way favor of games that already exist. There's already an open arena online fighting Dragon Ball game, Xenoverse 1 and 2. There's already an online Dragon Ball fighting game, which was Raging Blast 1 and 2. Yeah, they're outdated and they're not up to the current gen, but that's not the point. The point is they already did it. Everything that Tenkaichi 3 is doing is stuff that can be done better. If you want a fighting game that's legitimately competitive, Dragon Ball FighterZ did that job already. And I'm not saying that to downplay Tenkaichi. Don't get me wrong, I'm still getting this game because I'm excited to see how they're going to take it, and it definitely will be a fun game to play and stream. And with the inclusion of online, I'm sure we're going to have an online audience. I just want to know how long that online audience is going to stick before people start to leave the game. Sadly, Unlike Xenoverse, Dragon Ball games normally don't keep their online presence unless it's Fighters. And the only reason Fighters keeps its presence at this point is because it's mostly competitive. So, with that being said, that's only because Dragon Ball Fighters is an EVO. A competition where if you win EVO, you win cash prizes. So much more is on the line. It's a higher stakes. It makes sense. But Dragon Ball Sparking Zero more than likely isn't going to be on EVO for two reasons. One, because we already have a competitive Dragon Ball game that's already on EVO. And two, Sparking Zero's not going to be as balanced as Fighters. It can't be. The roster's too damn big for it to realistically be. And people back then didn't play Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi to be competitively balanced. They played it because it was the same game where you can play Omega Shenron as well as Arale from Dragon Ball, the original series. It's a game that was unprecedented. It had a large roster. The problem with having a large roster, though, was that was pretty much the appeal. Unlocking the characters, going through the modes, going through the certain modes in different battles. Online battle was only available for Budokai Tenkaichi 3 for the Wii version. And even that was terribly limited because the Nintendo Wii was awful. Nintendo's online in general is usually awful. The only game that's somewhat decent online with Nintendo is debatably Smash Brothers. And even that has lag and it has all sorts of problems. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero just has the luxury of being on other consoles, hopefully not being on the Switch. So you gotta ask yourself this question. What is Dragon Ball Sparking Zero doing? That's not to downplay it. I'm definitely going to get the game. I'm going to play the game because, again, I'm interested to see which route this goes. And I like Dragon Ball. I still have Dragon Ball Fighters. I have a lot of my Dragon Ball games because I like Dragon Ball, the series. So, obviously, I want to see how this plays out. Will it be balanced? Hell, I went into Ultimate Tenkaichi a long time ago thinking, ooh, this was going to be great. But that's because they used the name Tenkaichi. They even used it in the exact same font as Tenkaichi's 1, 2, and 3. They did that as a marketing move because they knew that people would buy it because it has the name Tenkaichi on it. Only to find out that once people bought Tenkaichi, the game was trash. And that's not to be pessimistic on Sparking Zero's point. That's me basically saying, hey, I'm optimistic, but I'm also analytical. I'm also reasonable, and I'm also wary. I'm also very insightful, and I'm also observant. These are things that you have to be in order to get a new game to avoid either A, wasting your money, or buying something preemptively and spending too much on it. We already know that Sparking Zero is going to have tons upon tons of DLC patches. It's going to have a fighters patch. You're probably going to have to download an entire story scenario. Dragon Ball Daima might not wind up on Sparking Zero. You might have to buy it in a patch, like the Daima patch. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is going to have a regular mode that you buy at game stores that costs $69.99, aka $76.76, or you're going to have to buy the Dragon Ball Sparking Zero Z Edition. What is the Z Edition? It's the edition with pretty much all the DLC, or most of the DLC, for the first 3 seasons. And then you'll have to buy the other 2 DLCs. Why? Because Fighters did the exact same thing. Kakarot did the exact same thing. Hell, Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 at its current price is only about, what, $5? $10 maybe. But if you buy that game, then you're spending well over $200 in DLC alone. Because Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 has $200 worth of DLC on it. So you gotta ask yourself, what is Sparking Zero going to do that other Dragon Ball Z games haven't already milked your body out of at this point? These are questions that we have to ask. It's one of the reasons why when people ask, what do you feel about any new Dragon Ball game, or just any game in general, I always say, I don't know. Reason is because it's being observant, and there's nothing wrong with being observant. It's not nitpicking being observant. These are things that you realistically have to know. Why? Because you're spending money on the product. It's just like when I bought Sonic Superstars. Sonic Superstars, I played it, I streamed it, I loved the Sonic series. But I would tell anybody who's coming from the outside in to not buy that game at its full price, buy that game at a price drop. I can't imagine how people felt buying that game at $69.99, its retail price, only to find out like less than a month later, that price dropped down from $69.99 to $39.99. It lost $30. You could have saved $30 on that game, and it's all because that game was okay at best. And I don't want that to happen to Sparking Zero. It's the reason that I'm making this video in general, to critically analyze it, break it down, dissect it, and tell the audience what I think should and shouldn't work for this game, because I want the game to be good. I really do. But I also want the game to do something that makes me want to play it. And sadly, there's other Dragon Ball games that are doing its job. I think the reason that Tenkaichi 3 worked so well back in the PlayStation 2 and Wii era was because no other game could do its job. It was the only game that could do its job. It was the only one. This was back in like the burst limit era, where when we went to Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, people were hoping for a Dragon Ball Z Budokai 4, which technically was Infinite World's job. Infinite World was supposed to be a Budokai 4, but that didn't happen. It wound up getting the name Infinite World, mostly because it was so much like Budokai 3, they didn't want to go ahead and tack on a 4 to it. Maybe they just don't like the number 4. I don't know. But Burst Limit was supposed to pretty much do its job. And for the most part, it did. You can tell because Infinite World and Burst Limit have some of the same combos and some of the same music for some reason. Until you see the music change that they made thanks to the Kenji Yamamoto scandal and the whole changing the music thing. So, when you see that, it's because that played its job. But now, there's gonna be no Burst Limit 2. There's gonna be no Budokai 4. There's gonna be no Infinite World 2. Why? Because the Dragon Ball head-to-head fighter has already been superseded pretty much by, like, Fighters. Fighters, unfortunately, takes the helm for that. And that pretty much means we're not gonna have another head-to-head fighter unless it's Dragon Ball FighterZ 2. And that's mostly because it makes more money competitively. It's making money off of EVO events. It's making money off competitive players, local tournaments, national tournaments, regional tournaments. Don't even get me started. What's it called? Panda Gamer or Gamer Panda, whatever it's called. Basically the thing that gets people together in order to play fighting game tournaments that isn't EVO. Fighting game championships, all of those things. Hell, even anime conventions throw Dragon Ball Fighter tournaments. So Dragon Ball's already getting its notoriety video game wise by having one of the best video games, which was Fighters at that time. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot unfortunately didn't do that well because Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, while it did have a bunch of scenarios that you can buy via DLC that filled in that super space, it was bland. It was mostly just a arena fighter, but Xenoverse was already doing that job better. Because Xenoverse at least allowed you to customize your own character, so you felt more involved in what was happening. Whereas in Kakarot, you're just going through the motions. And even when you went through the motions, nothing felt exclusive to it. It was trying to be Legacy of Goku 1 and 2 and failed miserably. Because it didn't have the convenience of having that inclusive world. It was mostly you fly from destination A to destination B while leveling up your character, and once you're at a high enough level, you can fight the enemy in a generic open arena thing, and then once you do that, you level up your character. You can add buffs by using Chi-Chi to make different food, and then after that, you rinse, wash, and repeat until you go through the story. You do button combinations accompanied with really nice looking cutscenes, and bam, you were done. That was pretty much it. Not even to mention the AI. The AI, for the most part, let's say you don't even play online in general. The AI in Tenkaichi 3 was laughably bad at a certain point. I played a lot of hours of Tenkaichi 3 when I was a kid, to a point where I could crank the AI to its highest level and beat it while barely trying. The only way you could ever get yourself a real challenge in Tenkaichi 3 is if you customize the character you're going to fight using Z customization earring, Potara earrings, and making the character so strong that realistically it couldn't be beaten unless you were to do some crazy shit. Or mods, which we see a lot of those on YouTube anyway. That's another thing. The game Tenkaichi has been modded to death. So much to a point where they made Tenkaichi 4 using modding technology. Sparking Zero has a lot to do if it's going to surpass all of that. And again, this isn't me being negative towards the game. This is me being observant. This is me asking the bigger questions because these questions are necessary. These are questions that I'm sure they have to ask themselves when they're making the game in the publishing office. These are questions that are necessary to ask when in the game developing process. The beta mode. I'm sure there's probably going to be a demo mode of this game that's going to be broken down later on. Probably in like, I want to say mid 2024. Because I see this game coming out in probably late 2024, sadly enough. Or not even late. I would say if I had to tack a date onto Sparking Zero, I would say this game's probably going to come out. Definitely, it's not going to be the spring. I would say the summer? Late summer? No, fall. I say early fall. Early fall at best. So October. October of 2024. So, yeah. And to clarify, I'm not saying the game's going to be bad. These are just questions that game developers, anybody, has to ask. You need to ask these questions, and you need to be observant. If you're not, then you're just setting yourself up for failure. And this is obviously just to ask the bigger questions. I see so many people on YouTube hyped, but then they hype themselves up about things that essentially they made up or things that they bring up. Oh, probably it's going to be this. Probably it's going to be this. Oh my God. We're more than likely going to be able to do this. Yeah, okay. If that's the case, then like, I get the excitement for that. That's great. Be optimistic. That's fine. But also be observant. That's all I'm saying. I usually say be optimistic with caution. Why? Because it's necessary. This is what all game reviewers do, by the way. Like, or at least some that I wish would do that. And you, like, when making a game, or even making a franchise that has a game in it, you always got to ask yourself these questions and these questions alone. It's one of the reasons why Budokai Tenkaichi 2 and 3, and hell, Budokai 1, 2, and 3 did so well. They did well, at least at the time, because they knew what to add and take out in order to make those experiences better. They had to ask these questions. They had to tell themselves, this is what we need to add, this is what we need to take away. I think the biggest issue with Sparking Zero to me currently is that it came out so late after Tenkaichi 3. That's its biggest issue, because it's just like trying to start a project, right? And you start a project, and then you keep going with the project, right? You build and you're like, cool, I'm working on the project. Then let's say you take a break, a huge break. We're talking a 10-year break. And then you start on the project again. Well, objects in motion stay in motion. Newton's law. What happens with objects at rest? They stay at rest. Which means if you start doing something, you got all this momentum going, and then you suddenly stop. Once you start it again, you gotta like start yourself back up again and back up again. Now you gotta catch up. You gotta do research. You gotta basically do everything that made that thing good at first. But now you gotta remember what made it good and start back up. It's like asking somebody who is really good at fighting, right? Oh, you're a fighting champion, but you retired like 20 years ago and you've been eating junk food and sleeping since then. Well, now you're asking them to fight again. Do you think they're going to fight at the exact same capacity that they were when they were in their prime? No! Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi 3 was at its prime. Sadly, years have passed since then. Even if you look at the information, they say that Dragon Ball Sparking Zero took 5 years of development. Well, remember, Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3 came out in 2007. 2007. It's 2023 going on 2024. So even if you subtract those 5 years, that means they didn't start this until 2019. 2019 minus 7, that means like, that's 12 years. That's like a 12-year gap of nothing. Like, that's literally what's happened. 12 years. Now, you can argue, well, Raging Blast picked up on some of those years. Which, if we even look at Raging Blast, I would say I can't remember the exact date Raging Blast came out. But Raging Blast is essentially the predecessor to the Budokai series. So, we'll go with Raging Blast release date. Raging Blast came out in 2009. So 2 years after Tenkaichi 2. That's still a 10-year gap. And Raging Blast 2 came out in like, what, 2011, 2012? I want to tell myself it came out in 2012. It's 2010. Literally a year after the fact. Yeah, because it came out on November 2nd. So more than likely, Tenkaichi Sparking Zero come out in November too, or October. So yeah, even then, that's 2010. Even with 2010, we're talking, that's like damn near a 9-year gap. That's a 9-year gap. Then a 5 years on top of the 2009 into the development of Sparking Zero. Yeah, that's great that it's 5 years. That's absolutely wonderful. I'm glad that it took 5 years rather than them just making it on the fly and releasing it for the holidays. That's good. That's one thing I am excited about. But you gotta ask yourself, what research did they do? Did they play Tenkaichi 3 a bunch of times? Or did they play Raging Blast a lot? One thing I noticed in the trailer, they did the thing where like you can launch a beam and the character will deflect the beam. That's good, because that wasn't in Tenkaichi 3. That was in Raging Blast. Which means they obviously knew Raging Blast was the better game, so they took an element from the better game and added it on. That's good. Deflecting a beam is good. Beams being able to cancel each other out, that was in Raging Blast, by the way. So for those of y'all who don't know, in a struggle, if you do a struggle, you can actually, if you and your opponent tie on the struggle, then like the move just cancels out. Beams will blow up and cause like a large smoke, and if you win the like punching and kicking struggle, two of the characters will just punch at the exact same time and knock each other away, which is good. Because it's realistic, it's Dragon Ball-esque, and it doesn't punish anybody. It's just a draw. Realistically, I think that would be a nice addition if we do the struggle and the button combinations match up. It means the characters were able to block each other off. Whoever does it first or second could be objective, but if it ties, then it's fine. There's no issue against that. Either way, you're not messing your controller up. But, like I said, within 5 years, even with the 5 years, even on the 2019, it's very important, at least for me, as like a content creator and as someone who enjoys these games, to be very like observing of things. You want to know why? Because I was this way about Ultimate Tenkaichi a long time ago. When did Ultimate Tenkaichi come out? I want to say 2011? When did Ultimate Tenkaichi come out? Yeah, 2011. I was right. Literally 1 year after Raging Blast 2. Yeah, they kept cranking games one after another at that point. Ultimate Tenkaichi, I was so optimistic for that game when I was younger. Let's see, that was 2011, right? We're in 2023. So 2011 would mean that that game came out 12 years ago? Yeah, like 12 years ago. 12 years ago, let's see, I'm 31 now, so 31 minus 12 would be, I want to say how old was I? I was 19, Jesus fucking Christ. Okay, so I was 19 when Ultimate Tenkaichi came out. Young me. 19-year-old me was going into Ultimate Tenkaichi thinking, oh, this is going to be so great. Oh my God, I can't wait to play Ultimate Tenkaichi. Oh, this is going to be the shit. Yes, this is it. This is the Dragon Ball game we were waiting for. Raging Blast, whatever. Ultimate Tenkaichi's even got the Tenkaichi name. Oh my God, I love it. It's trash. Absolute garbage. The game was absolute garbage. I mean, absolute trash.
Emotional damage.
And honestly, it was mostly because, again, they used that tag name. They were like, hey, look, we're called Tenkaichi. So much like the Tenkaichi games, we're going to be successful, right? No, it wasn't.
How dare you?
It wasn't. It wasn't successful. It was a load of garbage. It was very bad. Very bad. Super bad. I think the only thing Ultimate Tenkaichi had going for it was that you can create your own character before Xenoverse, and even that wasn't done that well. It was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. But yeah, that's pretty much what we wound up going into. I was actually 18. I just realized that I wasn't 19 because it happened in October. So that's pretty much when I expect Sparking Zero to come out. It's probably, I want to say October, mid-October, late October, early November. Mid-October, late October, early November. That's my, like, theory of when this game is supposed to come out. I think. I would love for it to come out on the 16th of November. That'd be kind of cool. Because then it'd just be my birthday. Which, let me see something. Going forward. November 16th is on a Saturday next year. My birthday's on a Saturday next year? Neat. That's kind of cool. Better than what it was. I think it was on a Sunday last time. Anyway, so that's pretty much like, that's one of the very many things we talked about in our discussion of Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. And obviously, like I said, I know that a lot of people are going to be like, oh, you're just taking jabs at it. Like, no, I'm not. I wouldn't say these things if I didn't care. Games I don't care about, I don't talk about. Games I don't give a shit about, I don't talk about. Why? Because I don't care for them. I wouldn't give a shit about them. If I did give a shit about them, if I did give a shit about them, then obviously I would put more effort into talking about them, right? It makes sense. It's like watching a son or a daughter grow up. You want them to be your best. But that means if they mess up or they're doing something that you think is going to like put them in potential danger, you got to correct it. Otherwise, that's just negligence on your part. I want Sparking Zero to be good. Hell yeah, I wish that Sparking Zero winds up being a game that like lasts the test of time. I honestly know, unfortunately, they're going to do their modern game isms. Like, for example, they're going to make it so, oh, you're not getting the whole game at start. You're not getting all the characters. For example, they're going to do that thing where, you know how in Tenkaichi 3, you could pretty much unlock all your characters. All you have to do is meet the requirements to get them. Well, unfortunately, due to modern game isms, you stop and go, wait, I'm not getting every character, am I? Nope. You gotta wait like 4 or 5 months so they can come out with a patch or a seasonal, and then you're gonna get Dragon Ball Sparking Zero Season 1, Season Pass Season 2, Season Pass Season 3, Season Pass Season 4. Then you gotta get the DLC for this deluxe scenario. Then you gotta get this DLC that does this. Then you gotta get the DLC that does this. Or, upon release, you can get the you can get the pack that allows you to basically buy the full game plus seasons 1 and 2, like with fighters. But then that means after season 1 and 2, you gotta buy season 3. Then you gotta buy season 4. Then you gotta wait for a whole new patch to unlock to download a bunch of other characters. Or you gotta buy each character individually for like $3 or $4 or $5. That shit's stupid. When in reality, it's because they didn't give you the whole game. And that's not even a Dragon Ball problem. Video games have that problem. All video games are doing that now. That just unfortunately comes with the times. Why? Because it allows for them to literally milk you for all your money and pretty much punish you for buying the game at retail price by forcing you to buy the game at retail price, plus a bunch of microtransactions that realistically should have came with the game in the first place. Time blocked out of characters. Let me be Barris on day one, darn it. Yeah, like what Navy just said is a legitimate complaint.
Not the Navy!
I gotta wait to be a character that I know damn well is in that game. It's like, I know you're in the game, I know you're playable, your coding is there, but it's not time for you to be unlocked yet. And that shit's stupid. It's real stupid. Also, modern gameisms are going to have patches, buffs and nerfs. Now that sounds like a good idea, actually. It means that certain overpowered characters can, in theory, be taken control of and balanced out as later seasons pass. But as we've already established, even with Dragon Ball FighterZ, no character is ever going to be perfectly balanced. You're just going to wind up with characters that are overpowered. You're going to wind up with your Ultra Instinct Gokus, your Super Saiyan 4 Gogetas, your Android 21 Lab Coats, and your Kid Boos. And that's something that you can't avoid altogether at all. And that's just like things you're going to have to deal with. I know what this is. I think he meant I know. You said plenty of times that you don't care about modern Dragon Ball, so why do you care so much about this game? This isn't an anime, it's a video game. It's one of the reasons why I even said that Kefla, it was one of the reasons why in Dragon Ball FighterZ, I was fine with Kefla being a DLC character. In fact, I liked Kefla more as a video game character than in her appearance in the anime. Why? Because Kefla's a video game character. She's not a video game character in the sense that she's an actual video game character, but even in the context of her series, Kefla seems more like a character that's added so that you can just say, look, we have a female Saiyan character that's on the same par as the others, and she's a fusion. It's mostly a marketing character. She has no narrative purpose. She has no character development. She doesn't have any real in-depth character about herself. She has no character arc. She has nothing about her that makes her three-dimensional. She's simply there for somebody that Goku needed to punch, to get him hyped up so that he can punch Jiren. She's simply just a stepping stone, which means when you put her as a video game character, that's fine, because she doesn't need to be three-dimensional. She doesn't need to be nuanced. She's already two-dimensional. She's already flat, so she's in a video game. Making her a playable character with a bunch of energy blast is fine, because that's what she was in the anime. I didn't mind Kefla being a video game character, because in modern Dragon Ball, while I don't care for some of the shit that they do in modern Dragon Ball, in the video games, you're allowed to be more creative. You're allowed to play more. You're allowed to embrace the ridiculousness of the lack of story or story that there is, because it's a video game. It's why I didn't really care for the canosity of Dragon Ball's fighter storyline. I perfectly am in the idea that, yes, you can have a storyline where Goku, Yamcha, Tien, Krillin, Piccolo, Vegeta, Android 21, Android 18, and all the others get together in order to team up to fight evil Android 21 with no contradictions on power scaling or when did this happen in the canon. You don't have to care about shit like that because it's a video game. Video games break that realm already, so you're allowed to be a little bit more free with your perspectives. Who cares what happens in the narrative? It's a video game. It's one of the reasons I don't care about that. So here, as a video game, you bet your ass I'm going to be more excited for characters like Kefla and all of them, because those characters can be video game characters. They're allowed to break that reality. But in a narrative that actually has a story with characters and character development and interaction, Kefla just seems like a one-note person that only exists for that one purpose. She never makes a reappearance again. We never dive into the character's concept. We never see if Khalifa and Kale are okay with losing. We never get to see how they feel about it. We never see them interact. We never see them feel bad that they lost. We never see them feel like they need more control of their power. We never see them talk about these things. We never see them develop. We never see them have in-depth conversation. We never see them have any conflicts outside of that very small arc that they were in. They came, they fused, they fought Goku for a little bit, they got beat. That's it. And in the manga, they came, they fought Gohan. That was it. That was all they did. The story doesn't require those characters to be in depth. The story doesn't require them to be nuanced. The story doesn't require them to be anything. So in video games, they ironically work because they have no story behind them. So they're already fine. It's one of the reasons I don't care for Trunks being able to go Super Saiyan Ikari, aka Super Saiyan Rage, because in a video game, it's just a power-up. But in the anime, it's not a video game. It's a narrative. But unfortunately, that narrative is Trunks got mad, so he's able to use this new transformation randomly. You can play around with those things more in a video game because you can explore those things and get creative as a player. That's the reason that can work. Is there a part of the franchise? Time blocked. Oh yeah, I already read that comment. So yeah, that's one of the things that I really wanted to look into. For the most part, looking into it even further, like I said, mostly what I expect from Sparking Zero is, one, I want to see differentiations in character combos. I don't want it to be a situation where if I press square 4 times and triangle, all the characters do the exact same type of shit. I want Goku to be able to do fast combos if you press the square button 4 times, but his triangle button leads to an open opportunity to use instant transmission. I want Vegeta to focus more on heavier hits, but if you use triangle, you can lead in to him canceling it out to a signature move where he can launch energy volleys. Or with Trunks' situation where he has zoning, where if he hits you a couple of times and uses the signature move, he backs up to allow him space to use his supers. I want things that allow the characters to have their own individual fighting styles. I want characters to feel like you have to actually master them. And in a roster of well over 200 characters plus, it's very hard to see if that can happen. I believe it can, but that would require a lot of studying. And then even when you buff and nerf characters, this will require a lot of studying. Well, I've been out here, no complaint from you, when Ego, Vegeta, Moro, Granola, and Heat come to Sparking Zero. They're in the manga. I don't know if Sparking Zero is going to really focus on them. Reason I say that is because Tenkaichi 3 didn't even do that shit for real. Every character that showed up was a character that showed up mostly devoted to the anime. Case in point, Garlic Jr. was in Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichis 2 and 3. And he's not in the manga. I think the manga is trying its best to just sort of keep its own deal until the anime either A, adapts it, or B, they run out of progress to go. I think the manga's sort of just going its own route. And even if it does, that means that the video game would have to do the manga story before the anime even did it. Which I guess that could add some level of new stuff to it. But then you got to ask yourself, well, if they do that, then what will the anime do? Will the anime be better or worse? Will it be like a Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm situation where for some reason the video game does a better job adapting what happens with Naruto versus Tobi than the actual anime did? If you played the video game Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm 3, Naruto's fight with Tobi is better than his fight with Tobi in the anime. By a long shot, actually. So the question is, well, how would they handle that? Will they go the traditional route, or will they make up their own shit? Budokai 3 proved that could work in theory. The other Budokai games, however, played around with it and kind of muddied it up. Like, for example, Budokai Tenkaichi 3 didn't turn Goku back into a kid. Goku was just Super Saiyan 4 the moment he showed up to certain fights. Well, Tenkaichi 2 did that. Tenkaichi 3 did not do that. Tenkaichi 3 still used Kid GT Goku for certain situations, but that was only a very small handful of situations. For the most part, he was Super Saiyan 4 in most of those fights. It's a lot to think about. And again, I really worry about how Sparking Zero is going to handle that story because it needs to do something that's going to separate it. For the most part, I think Sparking Zero just needs to do something that makes this game its own game, Which is funny because it's using the name from Tenkaichi. It's using the company from Tenkaichi. It's using everything that's based pretty much off of your nostalgia alone. But if it's going to survive and have longevity, then it's got to do something different to make it its own game. Or to the very least stick out so that if it becomes a part of the Tenkaichi series, then it's at least something that makes it worth playing. I say this because, again, back then Tenkaichi 3 didn't have a lot of competition. Tenkaichi 3 didn't have to compete with any other Dragon Ball game. It only had to compete with itself. Tenkaichi 3 was the only Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi game out at the time. It was the only Dragon Ball game out at the time that was, like, relevant. There were other Dragon Ball games, yeah, but they were mostly on portable systems, or they were spin-offs, or they were things that we really didn't, like, have as much, like, traffic. Here, we're dealing with a situation where Sparking Zero has to compete with Xenoverse 2, it has to compete with Fighters, and it has to compete with the various mobile games. Now, you can count out the mobile games, obviously, but you gotta also take into account, again, Xenoverse 2. What if they decide to do Xenoverse 3, which, yes, I know the same company is working on that. I know the same company is doing Sparking Zero. I know that. You don't have to remind me. I got that. I'm just saying, Xenoverse's whole deal was basically an MMO. Will Sparking Zero take that route too? Remember, stats weren't really used a lot in Tenkaichi 3 except when it came to the Z customization. But if that's the case, you could just use the normal versions of the characters whose stats were more or less varied, but they were fixed. In Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3, if you wanted to customize your character, you could customize them as much as you want, but there were certain characters that still had an edge over others. For example, Broly can't flinch if you use normal light attacks, but if you combine those light attacks with a heavy attack, then Broly will flinch. But if you customize Broly all the way to max, then even heavy attacks won't make him flinch. He's just this immovable force that can't be hurt by anything except super moves. But meanwhile, Chaozu, if you customize all of his stats to the max, he still can get beat by a character in normal mode if they're like a character like Broly or Omega Shenron or Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, because Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta and the others are really strong. So they can still take a crack at Chaozu even if Chaozu's stats are maxed out. How does stat distribution even work in this game? Like, for example, in Raging Blast, the stat distribution was that you put like these Tetris blocks to add up each of their stats. You can make normal state Goku focus on melee attacks and have Super Saiyan Goku focus on super attacks. That's how that worked. You could have Super Saiyan 3 Goku focus on defense, or have Super Saiyan 2 Goku focus on energy, so he has the most ki. Or you can mix and match them, or you can make it so normal state Goku has very little Tetris pieces, while the stronger forms have stronger pieces, thus widening the gap of power. It makes sense and allows you to funly create whatever you want. Raging Blast 2 sadly kind of nerfed this by making it so the characters only had certain slots that you can fill in with certain items that increase their stats. Very much akin to Tenkaichi 3's style of customizing the moves and their stats. But that begs the question, well, what do we do here? How do we fix this situation? What's Sparking Zero's customization? Will their customization be better, or will it be the exact same thing that we just got? And if so, how can you customize your character? Can you make them a broken OP mess? Or are they going to be able to limit it? There's a fun to both, but you got to ask yourself these questions. Obviously, if you can customize them up to the max, that begs the question, can you play with the busted character online? Or are you only allowed to use the character in their normal stages? Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 made it so you can customize your character any way you want. But that was because the characters were based off an MMORPG style situation that just happened to have action combat inside of it. Which means, yeah, you could customize your character to have some ridiculous stats allocated to one of those spots, but it was off the premise that other characters were doing that exact same thing. But if you were to take Sparking Zero and make it competitive, then what do you do when a character is customized to the very max? Or is it going to be an unwritten rule that if you play online, you can only play the character in their normal stages? Is that the case? Will that be the case? And if you are only able to use them in their normal moves, can you at least customize the super moves that they use, or are you limited to using a set-based super set? This means you can only use Goku with the 5 moves that he comes with on standard, or you can customize the character. Use Goku and you're allowed to customize whatever moves he does, but you can't allocate his stats. These are questions that need to be asked because years have passed in Dragon Ball, and you need to ask these questions. And sadly, I think Xenoverse 2 is the closest we ever got to answering some of those questions to a degree. And even then, you wound up with some OP nonsense. And Xenoverse 2's biggest problem was that it wasn't a very great fighting game. Yeah, it had online, and it was fun, and had its messy nonsense. But for the most part, there were things that just were blatantly fucked up. Like, for example, if a character's right above your head, rather than your character looking up and meeting them or locking onto them to meet them up, to fly towards them, which you can lock on, I know you can do that, the character would instead stand the exact direction that they were. That means the character is standing like this while going up diagonal. This leads to some very awkward combos. You can use a high-speed rush attack to have the character flail away at them with punches, but they're aiming at nothing. There were some ultimate moves that for some reason just didn't do jack shit. There were some times where characters could teleport shit, and realistically they had no business doing that. Xenoverse 2 had all of these problems. We let a lot of them go because, again, this wasn't a game that you took seriously enough. How will close combat work? How will, like, all of those things work with the tangent and what they happen? The only reason Xenoverse 2 had, again, 1 million active players was because people were mostly playing it for the RPG factor. Also for the fact that it has team battle. And that's another question. How will online work? Will you be able to have 5 people play on an online team? Now, that's one thing that could save it. Remember earlier when I said that you can use 5 characters on a team? Well, imagine you and 5 other players having access to a team, a solid team. That means you and 5 other players are fighting off against you, 4 other people, and 5 other players, making a grand total of 10 people and 1 active server, meaning you can be on a team with 4 other people fighting off against someone else with 4 other people, making a grand total of 10 people, essentially making a Dragon Ball Z squad battle situation, which in theory sounds fun. You can switch out and tag out to other players while they fight off against them. They have control of them. They can very much take advantage of this, and this would be great. Hell, even if, this would lead to some confusing things though. Like, for example, let's say you and somebody else, you're controlling Goku and another player's controlling Vegeta. Can you fuse? Then what happens? Do you have control of the fusion, or do they have control of the fusion? GameStop, Steam already confirmed that in their website. They're not going to have multiplayers? Well, that's already a strike against it, sadly enough. And that was the one thing they had going for them. That was like the one thing they had going for them. So, again, that leads to the question, what is separating this game from the other Dragon Ball Z games that are already out? And again, this is why we ask these questions. We ask these questions because we gotta tell ourselves, what am I doing? What is the game that I'm expecting versus the game that I'm hyping for the one and the same is what I'm saying. But with that being said, we're at the 2-hour mark, and I think I've exhausted this topic as much as it realistically can be, at least until we get some new content. So far, honestly, we're still in we haven't even gotten more footage outside of the trailer footage. I still don't think it's too late for them to try a multiplayer situation. I would love an idea where there could be 10 players and 1 lobby, and they all get to utilize each other by having them have a team. That would be fun. That would actually make Sparking Zero pretty fun, because then you and a couple of buddies can get on a Discord server and be a team, an effective team that works together. that's able to play off of each other's strengths. You're able to work in a team, or you're able to like switch out at a right time and swap out with somebody else. Hell, you'd be able to have a squad, and that can be your squad. That could be the one thing that takes this game to and makes it competitive, because then you have a team of people that are working together who know how to play from the rear. You could have one situation where all of your party members have pretty much lost, and one of your party members is like the only one left against 3 people, and they make this magical ass comeback, and then all of your friends are like, yo, you did it, you fucking killed 3 people at once, way to go, man. Or you get hilarious situations where, dude, you didn't do shit to that entire team, you didn't even take out one dude. Or you'd be like, don't look at me, I knocked out 2 players. Like, that would be so fun. No, not even Xenoverse. I'm talking like in one-on-one. I'm talking like, for example, in Tenkaichi 3, it was 2 characters, only 2 characters. The rest of the characters were in the background until you click the switch button to switch them out. So it'd be like they're all you're doing 1v1 matches, but it's gonna be 5. It's gonna be 5 team. Well, it's gonna be 5 per team. So once one character gets knocked out, they switch with the next team member. It's not all of them fighting at once. Xenoverse had them all fighting at once. I'm talking in this one, you do 1v1s, but they're on a team of 5. That's what I mean. Like, for example, if I use Goku, then say Terrell uses, I don't know, Pikkon, and we'll say Richie uses Janemba, and TSS uses Broly. I don't know, I'm just naming random people. And then meanwhile, on the other end, we've got KG using like Majin Vegeta, and then we'll have Nessa using like Majin Buu or something. Well, when the fight starts, it would originally be my character, which I guess would be Goku in this situation, versus KG's Majin Vegeta. If Majin Vegeta knocks me out, then I'm no longer able to play the game anymore. But it swaps to the next character, which would be Terrell's character. And whoever Terrell's using, I guess Pikkon in the example I just gave, he'll be using it. So it'd be a 1v1 fight, but KG still has the same health from when he fought me. That's what I mean. Xenoverse let it so you can use everybody at once, which was fun for team attacks. But I'm talking a 1v1 with a squad of 5 and 4 in the back. And then let's say I don't want to fight anymore, I can click the switch out button, and if I switch out and win the tag team battle, I can switch out to somebody else who's on the field, pretty much bringing them out, forcing them to fight. That can work for or against me in some situations. Xenoverse made it so everybody was in the fight at once. Kind of like Smash Brothers, yeah. Well, not quite like Smash Brothers. Again, Smash Brothers, that was team battle. Everybody fought at once. I'm thinking more or less like stocks. Yeah, actually, that's a great example. It's like stocks. But imagine each stock is a different character. But yeah, those are my hopes. And again, I want to be optimistic for this game. I do want it to have its own identity, but still do the things that made the other games great. One of the things I really liked about Tenkaichi 3 is that it improved on Tenkaichi 2. And Tenkaichi 2 improved on Tenkaichi 1. And the sad part is Tenkaichi 1 was a very clunky game. I'm surprised that game even got a sequel. That game was terrible. The fact that it was able to even get a sequel was amazing. And then when it got the sequel, it was good. And then Tenkaichi 3 was good. So I definitely hope that Sparking Zero is able to pass on that baton. The problem is, I've also seen what happens when they've tried to milk the success of that, and they've made games like Battle of Z and Ultimate Tenkaichi and Kakarot, and even Xenoverse 1 to some degree, that didn't realistically live up to the expectations that everybody had. I'm older now, and obviously my view on things is going to get better. My view on things is going to be more critical. My expectations are going to be more. But there's nothing wrong with having those expectations. The reason being is because those expectations allow us to be observant. It allows us to be careful. It allows us to approach things. It allows us to study and analyze and expand our knowledge and become better for it. It allows us to fully recognize what works and what doesn't work. Game critics, game developers, game programmers, game testers do these things all the time and get better for it. The reason Tenkaichi 2 was so much better than Tenkaichi 1 is because someone asked the very questions that I'm asking right now. Someone did the analysis that I'm doing right now. Someone discussed the things that I'm discussing right now. And then they continued onwards with Tenkaichi 2 and then Tenkaichi 3. But at some point, some people stopped doing those things. And then when they started doing them again, people kept thinking of it as critical. So that's why I asked them. But with that being said, I think we're going to go ahead and end it. I've rambled on long enough. With that being said, tomorrow is Tabletop Tuesday. We're going to go ahead and do Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. So make sure you guys look forward to that. And then on Wednesday, I will not be streaming. And if I do, I'll probably stream very late. It'll probably be a very late stream. I'll probably do like the Indigo disc for Pokemon, but it'll be extremely late. And then on Thursday, I'm not streaming, and I'm not streaming on Friday either because I have a Christmas party thing to get to, and I'm going to be hanging out with a couple of friends afterwards. Saturday, I believe Terrell will be doing Sakura Wars, so make sure you guys check that out. And then on Sunday and Christmas Eve, I'll probably be doing Blue Dragon. But I had a really fun conversation. This was a great roundtable. I think this was very good. Well, I don't know if it's going to be in the game, but we will know more details about the game on the 27th of next month during Dragon Ball Hour. Yeah. And realistically, I don't even want a lot of trailers for this game. One of the fun parts about Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3, we barely got any trailers for that game, so everything felt new. All those experiences felt exclusive. They were like new experiences. They were moments that we opened our eyes to and got them. That's because the internet wasn't as prevalent back in the day, so we weren't hit with trailer after trailer after trailer. Realistically, I'm fine with us getting like this trailer and that's about it. And maybe a couple of screenshots, but I realistically don't want a bunch of trailers because I want to be introduced to the game my own way. I want to experience the game. I want to live those moments. I don't want some thing on YouTube going, ooh, look, we get to do this, and if I break it all down, you get to do this and this and this. No, let me do that. Let me explore that. Let me be in the realm of that. Then we can talk about it after the games come out. That would be fun. Reviews, we can discuss it afterwards. But a trailer, too many trailers at least, will ruin that. It's just like what happened with Pokemon Sun and Moon. I watched so many of those damn trailers. By the time I played Sun and Moon, it felt like I had played the game already. But again, rambling still. So let's go ahead and let's toss a raid over to somebody else. Let's see. I will go ahead and Islumi is a pretty cool friend. Also, she's almost at 1,000 followers. So let's go ahead and show Islumi some love. Dr. Slump O'Reilly better be in the game, specifically when we know she was in 3. Of course she's going to be in the other ones as DLC for the Dragon Ball pack. But anyway, let's go. All right. But with that being said, I'm going to start saying my outro a little bit more. That was it. Tyrone TG3, outro.